not checking my Facebook messages or something.
Well, I just love that though, Steve, because you message me. Because I try my best to message you or to email you or whatever back on the same medium that you've contacted me with,
I
because
know.
I know
We
how that
should
is.
just move to email because email is what I'm on all the
Okay,
time. So, I
okay,
mean, but as you've experienced, there could be extreme delays there too. So, I happened to think of that this
yes,
morning when I was in my meditation studio. I'm like, oh crap, I need to do it.
yeah.
So, and then I didn't get back on Facebook. So,
I
because if I
know.
get
You
back
know
on
what?
Facebook, then I'm just wasting a bunch of time that I didn't
Okay,
have to
you know what I'm
waste.
gonna do? I'm gonna send you from now on. I'm communicating with you through WhatsApp. I'm just gonna send you a voice message and say, Steve, this is what's up.
But see, I don't check WhatsApp either. All right.
Oh,
So we actually have some viewers. So let's go ahead and get rolling.
okay,
And
yes.
then you can
Hello,
tell people
everyone.
that I don't check any of my messages.
Yes, I'll get to that. We'll definitely get
All
to that.
right, let's go.
All right. So, hi, I'm Dr. Asha Prasad with my co host, Steve Harper. Thank you so much for joining us with our Conversations with Asha and Steve podcast / Facebook Live. So, how are you, Steve?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. I'm doing really good. Yeah.
We were talking as we came on air about the fact that I messaged you and then you
Yeah.
responded because you would imply by sending a message with a question that you would want that response. But I
Exactly.
forgot to go back and check what your response was. So I apologize publicly now that I've just
Now
outed
that everybody
myself
knows.
completely that this is the problem.
Well, it's tricky, I know, because there's so many different ways to communicate. And so we just have to pick one. We have to pick one that we both are going to look at. That's the key.
I say we stick with email.
All right, email it is. Everybody knows that now that's watching. We are going to communicate through email. So we
But
won't
I'll
have any.
probably still send you messages through Facebook,
That's okay. I'm going to ignore them.
Instagram, WhatsApp. It's wherever I happen to just be in the moment at that
Yes.
point. But
Yes.
oh, we have Kellyanne with us. Kellyanne is
Hello.
in Florida. I hope Kellyanne, you are
Okay.
staying safe from all the crazy weather that is
Yes.
happening over there. So thanks for joining us. We definitely appreciate it. Asha, you definitely need to connect with Kellyanne. We'll talk
Okay.
after we're done with this, but she has left a very successful career as a teacher.
Okay.
And it's ironic that she's joining us today because we're talking about entrepreneurship, but she is
Well,
actually taken all her experience and she is venturing into her own business. And
wow.
she
That's
didn't
great.
even know we were talking about this topic. So the fact that she came on to watch us
It's
today,
meant to be.
how amazing is that? That
That's
I mean,
wonderful. Congratulations, Kellyanne. That is awesome. That is
she
really, really cool.
she's leveraging actually a real serious problem where parents are struggling with this new model of education that's happening
Hmm.
thanks to our friends with the virus. Not really our
Friends with
friends.
the virus. How about our friend, the virus? How about that?
Her new entrepreneurship venture is brought to you compliments of the virus. But she's actually working on a program that is actually helping those stay-at-home
Okay.
kids stay connected and how to navigate the waters
Yeah.
with the education process, the teach to interact with teaching, and if they are looking at alternative education opportunities,
Yeah.
she can kind of guide and direct them down that path. And so it's a really really cool
Great.
environment for her to be in.
That is so needed. That's so needed. Is it just going to be like, is it nationally, like all around the US? Well, you know what, Kellyanne, definitely. Oh, okay.
Oh wait, I was supposed to put it's her new life. Yes.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect.
Kellyanne, I'm sorry, I'm really slow on the comment things.
I
But
can't
then
even see
whatever
the
we
comment.
said, we have her, I think, rolling on the floor, or it could stand for something else.
Yeah, my
But yeah, so today's episode is, as we were talking about, is focused on entrepreneurship.
yeah,
And we've actually had some listeners to the podcast. So for those of you that
yeah.
are joining us, we're actually recording our podcast, but we're recording it live on Facebook. Obviously, that's how you're seeing it. We're also on Periscope / Twitter. We're on YouTube, both of our YouTube channels.
Yep.
And we appreciate you participating and joining with us today. But Asha and I have been doing a podcast for the last 3+ years,
Hmm.
Conversations with Asha and Steve, and we talk about a variety of topics relative to being entrepreneurs, leadership, how to maintain a healthy lifestyle and balance. Pretty
Mhm.
much anything is not off, off the plate for us to be able to talk about, right, Asha?
That's so true.
But unfortunately, Asha asked me to start doing these live streams. And so I think our viewership and our watchers and our listeners are probably left in great numbers because you have this to look at. So
No,
I
no,
apologize in
no.
advance. But see, most people tune in to watch the beautiful Dr. Asha Prasad.
No, no, no.
And, maybe hear occasionally some banter between the two of us on various topics, which, by the way, today is about
Entrepreneurship.
entrepreneurship. And as I stated earlier, we've had a couple of questions that have come in from prior listeners and viewers to
Yeah.
this, and they are super great questions because I think that they're timely. And certainly as people are coming back through to looking at reassessing a lot of elements of their life because
Yeah.
of the pandemic, a lot of people are starting to say, hey, what do I want to do? Maybe
Yeah.
utilize this time to start brainstorming, start thinking about whether it be a side hustle or whether it be maybe, taking that leap like Kellyanne is doing and is starting their own business. And so
Hmm.
it's a pretty exciting time. But, Asha, I know we had a couple of questions, and the one that
Yeah.
I sent you this morning, I don't see yet. And so
Okay.
I can't credit it because that person actually didn't want us to call them out
Right.
by name, but
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, Steve, do you want to start with that question?
yeah, I think that's a good question. That literally the question was, how do you know, that you are supposed to go down the entrepreneurial path
Mm-hmm.
if you've been accustomed to and you're currently working in more or less a corporate or 9 to 5 type job, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good question to start
That is
with
a good
because it's
question.
an opportunity for us to kind of dive into the process. And Asha, how would you respond to that in terms of how do you know when it's time to make the leap, and how do you know that you're
Mhm.
really more or less an entrepreneur in a corporate suit, so to speak,
Well, you
today?
know what? I think, Steve, actually, the fact that you're even asking that question or that person's asking the question is pretty much a good indicator that, you probably are entrepreneur. Because most of the time, people are not going to ask that question or not even think about it. They're not
Yeah,
going to be, because I think that when people are more solution oriented and really about solving problems, they're constantly coming up with new ways to do things, better ways to do things, innovative things to do things. I think it's a good indicator that you probably have that entrepreneurial spirit. Now, as far as like when to take that leap, that's going to really vary on I think, a variety of factors. I
sure.
think right now, like you were saying, right now is the perfect time to make that leap or to at least consider doing a side hustle, for example. I mean, I think that that's something when you're asking yourself about that. I mean, I don't know, Steve, about you, but I find that a lot of people that are entrepreneurs at heart are the ones that at some point they get to a level of frustration and like I think
Hmm.
we both can relate to that, dissatisfaction and that kind of thing. And I think if you're day to day going into work like that, I think it might be a really big indicator to say, wait a second, could I be doing something for myself? You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are re-examining right now,
Mhm.
especially because life is so different than
Yeah,
it was even 6 months ago, about whether they want to go back to that
yeah,
regular job. Many of us have been working virtual or working in decentralized environments, and
yeah,
some people are saying, I don't want to go sit in traffic every day to go to a job I don't really
exactly.
care to do, or I've reached kind of the end of my line relative to
Yeah,
what I feel like I am accomplishing here, or whether this is actually where I want to be spending the bulk of my time. And I tell clients, and just to recognize Kellyanne's comment, she's already
mhm,
off to the races, and she sees it, as the best decision she could have possibly made,
that's
and
right.
and we definitely are excited for her and what she's doing. We can come back to her business model here in just a little bit, but
Mhm,
ultimately, like with her situation, she was at a point in her life where she was starting to begin to evaluate, what do I
mhm,
really want to do? Is this
yeah,
direction that I've been going for the last 20 plus years as a teacher? Is that what I want to do for the next 5? And in her
yeah,
instance, it's a situation where she started to to really start to ask those questions last year. And then when the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
came about, it was really rather came back to a point where she was really starting to question whether it was a smart and safe decision for her and her for family to go back to school,
Right.
right? And
Right.
could she serve these students in a different capacity? And I think to your point, that's kind of where people start to get that
Yeah.
bug, that entrepreneurial bug is they
Yeah.
see a problem, they see an issue, and they think that they may potentially have a better mousetrap in order to solve that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that that is something that the pandemic has really, that's a positive thing that's happened, is it's made people reevaluate. I was talking to somebody just the other day, an old client of mine who is about to go into a new venture based because of what the pandemic has shown him. He's like, wait a second, actually, I need to shift gears. I want to, turn my attention towards something else. So it's very interesting because it's given this time of reflection and like, what is, figuring out what your why is. What do you want to contribute in the world? What do you want to spend the rest of your life doing and giving back to society? What is it that you want to do?
Yeah,
So,
I think that why piece is a really big aspect, right?
mhm.
Because I
Yeah,
think a lot of times people are you ask that question as a business owner a lot and as an
yeah,
entrepreneur, as a blossoming entrepreneur, but I also think it comes down to if you're sitting in a corporate job or a job that you've been in for a period of
mhm.
time, doesn't necessarily have to be with a corporation, could be any number of roles out there. But at the end of the
Right.
day, if you're not like fulfilling your own purpose and you don't feel like what
Yep.
you're doing is walking away from a job, every night, at the end of the day, you
Mhm.
feel like you've actually done something meaningful and you've
Yeah.
accomplished something. That's generally, at least for my coaching clients, generally when people start to look at that entrepreneurial side,
Yep. That's
because
right.
they recognize at the end of the day that they're not checking that box. I mean, they don't have a
Yeah.
why in their purpose. And maybe they do to a degree, like I got to make my car payment. I got to make my
Right.
house payment. I've got kids going to college.
Yeah.
I've got these economic pressures and you can't ignore those, right? Because at the end of the day,
No.
you want to absolutely recognize that you have responsibilities, and sometimes taking that dive into entrepreneurship can be a super scary thing because there's
Yeah.
no guarantee of success. But at the flip side of that is if you're in a job and you're working in a role that doesn't float your boat,
Mhm.
then you're just putting in time. I often tell people that it's a lot of times it's like treading water. And
Yeah.
are you moving? Are you stuck in neutral? Are you treading towards a goal or are you treading further away? And
Right.
I see a lot of
Yeah.
times people in life and especially in a chosen career path because that's where they got their degree or because that just happens to
Yeah.
be the role that they've kind of taken on. They get stuck in this pattern.
Yeah.
And what I actually find is a lot of times people aren't actually moving anywhere close to what their true potential could be, but they haven't really considered what their true potential
Yeah.
could be because they're like now stuck in this. Well, I got to pay the bills. I got to do this. I got to do that. So, do you see that with your clients as well?
I do. And I also see that people don't realize that they can choose differently. So, like, I've talked to several clients about this where they thought, well, I studied for this, I've done all this work towards this, I have to continue with this, rather than realizing, yes, you can take those skills, you can take that experience, and you can choose something different. You have the power to do that, you have the ability to do that. And if that's going to make, you feel more fulfilled and have a sense of purpose, I mean, that is really something that becomes more of like the goal and more motivating and inspiring to them than even those other, the obligations that they have. Of course, you want to fulfill your obligations, but there are ways it stimulates you to be more creative that way whenever you
Absolutely.
start realizing, like, wait a second, I do have the choice. I can choose something different right now. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. No one, and of course, Steve, and I know that this is something that I was talking to a client about just recently. Worrying about what other people think really becomes a block for a lot of people. It stops
Mhm.
them actually from living their full potential and living their dream, is they're worried about what other people are going to think. But at the end of the day, who really cares? Honestly, it's your
Yeah.
choice. Sorry to say it so bluntly, but you know what? Really, you've got to live. If it's something inside of you that's just like dying to get out, you got to let it out.
Well, and I think to a certain degree, you have to be conscious enough to recognize that that
Yeah.
is happening, right? And
Yes.
that you have the potential to do something completely different should you choose to do that.
Yeah.
The choices are available to you. It's funny. I'm working on a what potentially could be a new talk
Mhm.
and potential training about sort of that lifestyle approach that you take relative to when you're a kid and somebody said, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?"
Yeah.
We lose that wide-eyed enthusiasm that
Yeah.
that possible, that world is available, all the opportunities are available to us. We're only limited by our dreams.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like you graduate high school or you get into college, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you stop ever dreaming.
Yeah.
And people get stuck in the same rut career path that they
Yeah.
have been in since they got out of school or they got into the working environment. And then a lot of people find themselves in a situation where they feel like, well, I guess this is just it. I mean,
Yeah.
I would love to do this. I would love to have done something different, but I guess I'm stuck. And I really feel like, and as I'm kind of building out this content, that more and more of my coaching clients I know that I work with early,
Mhm.
they do feel that, and you
Yeah.
start to ask them, who put that idea in your head, who put that way of thinking there, and how is that serving you?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, most people are like, they're miserable at their job, they're miserable
Yeah.
at what they have chosen for a career path. They're doing life, or excuse me, work that's not fulfilling, and it ties on to a life that is just largely unrewarding,
Right.
and they kind of feel like that's you're stuck having to do that, right? So
Yeah.
I tend to challenge people to think bigger. Just because you're
Absolutely.
30 years old, 40 years old, 70 years old,
Yeah.
imagine the possibility of what that next thing could be if you were to put the time, energy, and effort towards building it. And that's where I think a lot of entrepreneurs, the difference between someone that is a dreamer and those that
Mhm.
are doers is that they have finally decided to put action towards and behind that dream to make it
Yeah.
possible. And I see that in a lot of entrepreneurs. They find a problem that other people aren't addressing.
Yeah.
They personally have experienced something that they know could be done better. In my instance, when I became an entrepreneur, it was working for guys, that initially started their businesses and were trying to run them like the corporations that they had worked for before. And it's like, it's not exactly,
Not exactly
doesn't
the way it
apply,
needs.
doesn't work, right? But they
Exactly.
were blinded by what they thought was the right way to do things. And
Right.
I thought basically I had better ideas. And so,
Yeah.
as I've told you before, part of the reason entrepreneurship was so attractive to me is because I'm basically not employable, right? So I'm I like to be in control. I like to be the idea person, but I also like the idea and the execution behind the idea and
Right.
playing a role within those. And so entrepreneurship was the only path for me, really. But
Right.
what about you? I'm just curious, based on, kind of, I know where you started career wise and kind of what you're doing today. And ultimately, how did you get to your why as an entrepreneur?
That's a really good question, Steve. It's funny because, like, I mean, I always knew that I was an entrepreneur, okay, at heart, but I was always kind of put into situations and put into feeling like I wasn't going to be. I don't know exactly how to explain that really clearly, but it was just many, many different things that happened. Now, my parents, my mom was an entrepreneur. And so I had a lot of examples around me that I was just like, well, wait a second,
Mm,
that for me is like inspirational to be able to do things the way you want to. And as the years went on, I thought, you know what, I'm going to get some experience and then I'm just going to take the leap of faith. And I have taken that leap of faith. Actually, majority of
multiple
the things,
times.
multiple times, and the majority of things that I do, it's really funny because I've had people say to me, Asha, like, you're doing so many different things. Like, how do you do so many different things? Why do you do so many things? Like, how is that even possible? And what I always say to that, it's really funny because you know what, Steve, it's like once you figure out what your why is, it does not matter the expression of it. And that was for me very key to realize that there were no limits to how I could express how I was going to help someone. My
Yep.
purpose is to help someone have a better life, have, more happiness, joy, health, abundance, everything in their life, to help them in every way that they can. And if they're an entrepreneur, with that, helping them build their company in order to fulfill that for themselves and also for their team as well. And so it was interesting for me, because it was like, when I started to figure out what that why was for me, I thought, wait a second, there is no limit. There's no limit of how you can express it. And that's where I stopped worrying about what people were saying, what they were thinking. And I still regularly get comments about this, that, and the other. Oh, what is she doing now? And I just kind of laugh it off and be like, you know what? Hey, my life, my purpose, I got to do that, because I know that I'm here to help people, and I want to do that in any way that I can.
Well,
So,
and it's really
yeah,
funny because you had a question that came in from one of your
yes,
folks that basically said, how do you deal with the haters, right?
yeah,
The people that don't believe in what you believe
yeah,
or what you see. And I think probably the one thing that I think that I see in almost every entrepreneur that's successful is that's what and how it happens. You see something
yeah,
that nobody else sees.
exactly.
And the big challenge is that, you have to know your why. You have to be mentally tough. You have to
Yeah,
be prepared for bumps in the road, because there are going to be plenty.
yeah,
And you have to start with more than just an idea. You have to
hmm,
know and understand what it's going to take to bring that to fruition, from ideation into the
yeah,
actual world. And
yeah,
that part, for me, at least from a business owner perspective, has been the most rewarding, to take something that nobody else saw and be able to bring it to fruition, and
yeah,
have people go, God, that's great. Why hasn't anybody else thought about it? That
yeah.
I don't know, because I'm not a genius. I just happened to
Yes,
luck
you are, Steve.
into,
We know you are.
seeing something that nobody else saw. And
Yeah.
I think that the big factor for the people that start, that ultimately have family or friends that are like, what are you
Hmm.
thinking? What are you doing? Especially in today's world and the economy, why would you ever possibly take that risk?
Yeah.
Well, now's the time to take the risk more than ever, because
Exactly.
there are no guarantees in life, right? From a
Nope.
career path perspective, you see companies, major corporations that are
Yes.
laying off in great numbers. And entrepreneurship, I think, for the right-minded people that kind of understand they've got something
Hmm.
else to contribute out there in the world, my God, this is your insurance policy. And this is
Yes.
your kick in the ass that says, hey, now is the time. Go make that happen.
Yeah. It's true. It is true, Steve. I mean, it's one of those things, and that was one of the questions that did come through about how do you deal with the critics of people telling you not to want so much or not to do so much, or because let me tell you something, people are going to come, and they are going to come with their own perspective and their own limitations in mind when
And
they're talking
agenda.
to you. An agenda.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, an agenda. They will try to steer you to get on their agenda really quickly. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean? So, I mean, it's one of those things, and you can realize it. It doesn't mean that you have to be rude. It doesn't mean you have to be, snippy with them or anything like that. But you can just not pay attention, in the sense of, what I mean by that is, focus your attention on what you want to build. Don't focus your attention looking at all the people pointing at you, because the way I look at that is that if you're not on the playing field, don't talk to me about what I'm doing. you know.
Well, I told a coaching client recently, I said, hey, all the people that said you couldn't do what you're about to do, I
Hmm.
want you to write their names down. I want you to remember, don't ignore them. I want you to write down what they said when they said
Yeah.
it, because what you're going to be able to do is to come back and go, hey, look, I want to give you two words, and they're thank you, because
Yep.
you provided
Exactly.
the additional motivation
Yes.
and the fuel for my success.
Yeah.
And I do sense, and I went through it as an early entrepreneur as
Yeah.
well, that a lot of times you really start to second guess yourself, and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
am I crazy, or are they right? And like Asha just said, if they're not on the playing field, they have no business coaching you on
Yeah.
what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say ignore them, use them as motivation. And
Absolutely.
just say at the time, hey, look, I appreciate that perspective. Thank you so much for sharing it. I don't happen to agree. You don't have to
Yeah.
tell them you're wrong, but I would. I mean,
You would, Steve.
that's just me. I'm a bit direct. But at the end of the day, you just say, look, thanks
Yeah.
for that input. I will definitely take it under advisement, and then walk away, because you
Yeah.
don't need to get into protracted conversations. You don't need somebody else's self-doubt or their
Exactly.
misconceptions about what entrepreneurship is to cloud anything that you're going to do point forward. just let them saying you can't do it be your motivator.
Absolutely. It definitely use it as motivation and inspiration to move forward. But one thing I would advise people is don't get into the fact that you feel like you need to justify to other people. Okay.
Agreed.
Definitely. I agree. You know what? Acknowledge people if you want to, say thank you very much for your opinion and move on, because we sometimes, especially when we're in that very vulnerable state, we may want to find a way to justify ourselves. And there's no justification needed. There
Yeah.
really isn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. So you had one other question that had come in from a listener that you wanted
Yeah.
to attack. Which one was that?
The other question that came in was, how do you get your current boss on board for you to become an entrepreneur, to start on your own?
That's a good one. Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to take it?
Oh, I can take it if you want a little bit, and you'll add on to it. This is an interesting one because I find you have two types of bosses, first of all. Well, you have more types, but we'll just put them into those that realize that are really proactively building leaders within their own company, okay,
Yeah.
and are happy to do so. And then you have those that just want to control and keep you small and keep you there with them.
Oh yeah.
Whoa. And I think, Steve, you and I both know both of those.
Oh
So
yeah. Do we work for the same people? I'm just
yeah, I
curious.
know. I'm pretty sure we do. No, but so my thing with that is that it's really going to depend on who your boss is, what type of boss they are, of whether, because I personally think, like, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, you know what, I want to start my own business, I'm all about encouraging them and saying, wonderful. And whenever you go out and start on yourself, is there a way that we can work together? That to me is like the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
But not every boss is going to be that way. I think it's really going to depend on how you can communicate clearly what you're wanting to do and really voice that to them. And depending on who they are, depending on what they stand for, then you're going to know pretty quickly whether they're going to support you or maybe unfortunately sabotage you or try to prevent you from succeeding.
Well, yeah, and I think it's important that you know what kind of boss that is, right?
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, if you know that you have a boss that you've watched how they perform, how they lead,
Mhm.
and you know that they're going to sabotage you at every, chance they get, or they're
Yeah.
going to try and undermine your confidence, then
Yeah.
clearly those are folks that you don't necessarily want to let in on your grand plan. But
Exactly.
pay really close attention to what they don't do well, and
Yeah.
then make sure you make very copious notes about that, because you don't want to ever repeat that, right? They become,
Yeah.
actually, believe it or not, another motivator to go start your own thing, but they also
Yeah.
become a great teacher about how to not be a boss. And so
Yes.
if you're an entrepreneur, the likelihood of you starting something that will require other people for you to be successful is pretty high. So
Yeah.
you've got to find a mechanism there to be able to take the good lessons as well as the bad.
Yeah.
And so I would say that on the bad bosses. The other, point to that, like you said, Asha, that the good bosses and the ones that are going to be there motivated to help you be
Mhm.
successful, you know, those are the people that you want to clue in on your plans early and often,
Yeah.
because they will start to lay the groundwork to help you figure out how to get that business off the ground in most cases.
Exactly.
And I think leaders come down to two things. You have leaders, good leaders create followers, great leaders create other leaders. And
Yeah.
a good business owner that has been there, done that, been successful, and they recognize they can't hold you, in business, in their business, or can't, count on you being there for the rest of your life.
Right.
Recognize that I can either do one of two things. I can make the rest of the time that they're with me and employed here miserable, which
Yeah.
doesn't accomplish anything,
No.
or I can do everything I possibly can in my power to teach, educate, and help them become the leader that they're destined to be. Because here's the
Exactly.
thing, good leaders recognize it pretty quickly, right? They
Yeah.
know who their
True.
superstars are. They know who is destined for bigger and better things. And they are the ones that are committed to helping play a role in them being successful point forward.
Yeah. Very true. Very, very true, Steve. So, yeah, were there any other questions that came in, Steve? Because I thought we had some questions. Did you have any other questions? I'm just looking really, really quickly to see if anything else
Yeah,
came in.
actually, okay. So
Yeah.
Jennifer asked me one question that said, how do you know when it's time to be the entrepreneur. So we kind of covered this at the very beginning,
Mhm.
but essentially you know in your heart of hearts that it's time to hang your own
Yeah.
shingle, and it's time for you to
Yeah.
actually strike out and do your thing. Now,
Yes.
when or to what degree that is really kind of something that you need to consider, because I would say just because you have a job today that is paying the bills and kind of, helping you make ends meet, nothing wrong with that, because I know a lot of
Right.
people that start their business while they're working somewhere else, and
Mhm.
it's called a side hustle, which means you're putting
Yeah.
time in the evenings, you're putting time in on the weekends, you're laying the groundwork so that when you're ready to jump ship, you are prepared and ready to go. I've seen entrepreneurs that
Mhm.
think that they're ready, and so they just, like what I call, burn the boat. They
Yes.
just say, "Hey, I'm quitting. I don't have a plan. I'm just banking on the fact that I'm going to be able to go make my product or service work," but they really haven't thought through the process
Yeah.
yet. So when they start and they open just by putting up a website or hanging their shingle, so to speak, and then it's like crickets. So you've got to lay your groundwork. And if
Yeah.
you are fortunate enough to be employed and you're not doing anything that directly conflicts with your current employer, then
Mhm.
utilize those evenings and weekends as an opportunity to build your base and build your business and create that momentum. So when you're ready, you're ready. And kind of
Yeah.
like what we just talked about, depends on what kind of boss you have as to how early you
Yeah.
want to clue them in that that's a direction that you plan to head. What would you say about that, Asha, in terms
Yeah,
of that?
definitely. I
When
agree
is
with you,
the
Steve.
time?
I mean, you know what? I think having a side hustle, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think that, if you have a job and of course, when you have a family to take care of and maybe you're the sole provider, whatever it is, I mean, you've got to make certain decisions based on what your individual situation is. And I think take the time, learn as much as you can, take that time to have a solid foundation, and you're going to know when that right time is, when you're just going to completely jump into it. But I think having a side hustle and taking the time to build that is, for a lot of people, Steve, I've seen it with a lot of my clients too, that has really worked out very, very well for them to do
Yeah,
it that way.
absolutely.
Um, you know,
Yeah, actually, the founder of Spanx was actually selling fax
yeah,
machines, and she's a
yeah,
billionaire now, right?
yes,
Sarah
that's
Blakely,
right. Yeah,
amazing,
yeah,
but she found a problem that annoyed her as an individual.
yes,
She determined that there was an opportunity to address that problem,
yeah,
and she put the time, energy, and effort into it before she ever left her job. She took
exactly.
her commission checks that she was making, and she
Yeah,
that became her capital. And I just watched her on a showcase webinar that
hmm,
Salesforce had her on a few weeks back. And she said, "We still have never taken any outside capital. We've
yeah,
still been 100% debt free. And we grew that business essentially right out of our garage." So
yeah,
she's somebody I would definitely study. And that would be one piece of advice I'd give
yeah,
someone that's considering entrepreneurship. Get a coach, read up on entrepreneurs. I know when
yeah,
Asha and I first connected, and she got me acclimated to like Sir Richard Branson. I read every damn book I could
yeah.
read on him because the guy was just, well, one, he was a nut, and
I love
I
it.
enjoy his antics a lot. But I loved how he ended up, some of the unique aspects of what he did to get Virgin Records, Virgin Airlines
Exactly.
off the ground, Virgin Hotels. And believe it or not, all these years later, my software company actually works with his company to build hotels. So there's
Right.
irony right there, right?
Yeah.
But I still haven't met him, and I still haven't been to his private island, but I know somebody who can get me there. So I'm almost there. I'm
And
almost
you
there.
can get us a ticket on the Galactic too, Steve.
No, hell
2
no.
tickets.
Hell no. We're not. That part is just bona fide crazy, crazy, crazy talk. The Virgin Galactic is the
Galactic.
spaceship he plans to take around just the outer, or what is it? The atmosphere, outside the atmosphere.
Outside the atmosphere. Just taking
Yeah,
a cruise, just to cruise around.
yeah. Okay, forget that. Anyway,
Okay.
we
Anyway, back
digress.
to
But the reality is there are a lot of people out there, whether it be somebody
yeah,
like Sir Richard Branson, Sarah Blakely, Mark Cuban,
yeah,
Gary Vaynerchuk. There's a lot of guys and gals out there that have that actually freely giving this advice and guidance, and
yeah,
showing you what it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur. And some of that information is just invaluable.
yeah,
And so I share that because even if you are working your job and that's not your gig for the rest of your life and you want to start something, start putting in the work now. If you don't have that idea, or you don't necessarily know exactly how that business is going to grow, doesn't mean you're not going to find it. And at the end of the day, you're going to be able to figure it out, because a lot of these people that have come before you, success leaves clues, and learn from them while you have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, definitely. I highly recommend that. I mean, gosh, you know what? An avid reader, definitely an entrepreneur, I can say that. We're usually very like avid readers of like tons of stories and books and everything, and get as much information as you can. That's for sure. Study these people. They're laying the groundwork for
Absolutely.
you to
So
learn
we have
from.
so Kellyanne, thank you so
Yeah.
much for all your comments. You've been awesome on Facebook.
Oh
I
yeah.
know we have a few folks that I think are trying to leave comments, and they're running into a problem. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
But I do have one, and I'm not sure why I can't publicly post it. But Mike asked, what are the two biggest mistakes we made when we started our companies?
Oh my God. Let me think about that for a second. Jeez.
Mike, you're super generous thinking there was only two.
I know.
I'll take it. I'll go first, and then you think of yours. I didn't have good legal representation initially. I used a buddy, like, that attorney that's a friend or a brother-in-law of a friend of a friend's. Don't do that. Get a good attorney. Get someone that is well versed in business, not just happens to be Crazy Eddie. That's the divorce attorney. I can incorporate some crap for you, no problem. I do that all the time. To that point, I would also say, look beyond whatever these LegalZoom or anything you can find on the internet that would be like a boilerplate template. Don't freaking use that.
Yeah, agreed.
So that would be one. The other one that I would say, probably the other mistake I made, was overcommitting on thinking that as a business. And I think people are away from this way of thinking a little bit, especially now during the pandemic. But don't overcommit yourself with office space, or trying to impress people by location and signage and all that stuff. Depends on your business, obviously. If you're opening a new chicken restaurant, you need to have signage, and it needs to be clean, and it needs to be in a good area that people will want to come eat your chicken. So there are exceptions to the rule. But I know for me, I probably bit off more than I could chew initially on a lease that became very difficult for me to get out of, for two things. One, when I outgrew that space and needed more space. And really, at the end of the day, what I thought was like really nice, everybody else probably was like, little questionable. I don't want to come to your office like anywhere close to like 5:30 at night. So get other opinions on those things, but don't overcommit yourself just because you feel like you have to keep up with the Joneses. Because a lot of businesses right now can be run right from, most of you are tuning in from home, or, via a laptop at at your home office, or in some instances when, the pandemic's not happening, you might be sitting in a coffee shop. I know a lot of people that have multi-million-dollar businesses that started sitting at a table at Starbucks. So,
yeah, that's true.
What about your two mistakes, Asha?
Gosh, I have so many. I was just sitting there going,
two biggest though. What are your two biggest?
Well, actually, you know what? One thing that occurred to me very early on, and I realized this, and I kind of backtracked once it's easy to hire people to do the things that you don't know or you don't want to do. Actually, I should say that you don't want to be doing. But one of the things that I've learned, and I learned this especially whenever I started my business here in the Netherlands, I realized that, you know what, I should probably know a little bit about it before I go out and hire people for it. So I know what they're going to be doing, what to expect. I had to learn that the hard way. That was one mistake that I made, but I learned that very quickly and corrected myself, did a course correction. The other thing is, I would say the same thing that Steve was talking about, going too big, trying to impress, trying to really go way beyond. It's not necessary. I know people, just like Steve, I know people that sit in the Starbucks or sit at a restaurant, and literally these people are millionaires. I have met people that literally have $1 million companies that literally are in flip-flops, shorts, t-shirt, laptop. That's it. So really don't be afraid to really learn all the things that you need to learn before you go big and start to outsource everything. Because there's so many things as an entrepreneur, you will appreciate knowing certain activities and certain tasks that need to get done, understanding them. Whenever you hire somebody, it's going to make that a much better hire for you, because you're going to know exactly what you need and exactly what you're paying for as well.
That's
So,
excellent advice. That's really, really, really good advice. I'll tag on to one other thing, Mike,
mhm,
that I'd say that actually tags into what Asha just said, that I personally didn't experience, but I have seen a lot of my coaching clients. They they think because I'm an entrepreneur that office hours are different, and
yeah,
oh,
it's
I'm an
true.
entrepreneur, I can work and live anywhere. And you see these people on like Instagram or wherever, like, that are off doing all these great things, and they look, looks glamorous to be an entrepreneur. Let me tell you, it's the hardest freaking job you're ever going to take on, most rewarding without question.
Yeah,
But the biggest mistake I see a lot of people that get into business for themselves is you don't recognize or realize how hard it is and
yeah,
how many hours it's going to take. That means you're not getting up at 8:30 in the morning and strolling into the office
yeah.
at 10 to take lunch at 11:30 to leave by 3.
Oh, wow.
You can't do that. And especially
Yeah,
for the folks that are hiring people, your employees, not only do you want to do what Asha just said, which is you need to be the one that does the job initially, you need to know and
mhm,
understand every aspect of that job, frontwards, backwards, up on top, and down below,
yeah,
because you need to be able to do it. Because I've been there. You end up
mhm,
thinking you're at a point where you can start hiring, and you get that good hire, and you kind of like, okay, I'm going to let everything go. And then next thing you know, they leave for another job, and
yeah,
you're screwed because you don't know all the processes that have been changed
yeah,
or what they've done differently. So really critical for you to have that foundational understanding of the roles, like Asha mentioned. But then at the end of the day, recognize that you're not signing up for a 40-hour-a-week job. You are
yeah,
likely signing up for an 80 to 120-hour-a-week job. And I know some of you might be sitting there going, holy crap, let me do the math on that. Like, yeah, it's
yeah,
scary. And
yeah,
it is an intense, challenging thing, but it's amazingly rewarding. Once you
yeah,
figure out how to get that business operating, once you've hired the right people, you have the process, the procedures, and the approach, then it becomes something that you can actually sit back and kind of see the fruits of that labor. But the key that I tell every entrepreneur, doesn't matter if you are, starting a small business all the way up to a larger tech play, is you
mhm,
ultimately want to build a business that you can scale, that scales beyond you.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, the only way to make true wealth as an entrepreneur and business owner is to be able to scale that business beyond you. Because if you go out and you can't take a break, you can't take a vacation, or you get hit by a truck and you can't work, that business needs to continue despite you. And
yeah,
that's pretty critical. And so I think a lot of times there are people that are kind of looking for that quick hit, that quick
yeah,
instant success, thinking business is going to be that way, and it isn't. But when you do start to experience that and you do start to build your business to be
mhm,
scalable, that's when you actually can sit back and rest a little bit. You can actually
yeah,
look at things. And that's where, and Asha and I talk about it on many episodes, thinking outside of your business, where you're working on the business, not in the business.
yeah.
But it's almost impossible to not do that from the get-go.
Yeah, that's very good advice, Stephen. You know what? The other thing about that is that those long hours and everything, just realize it not only takes it's taxing for yourself, but it's also on all your relationships,
Good
on your
point.
personal health, on your own well-being. It really, I mean, it takes something, and it's going to take a lot of discernment and discipline from yourself to be able to maintain, make time, and be able to be there for your relationships and also for your own personal health and well-being. You have to be able to juggle that. And it's the best time to start is at the beginning, especially whenever you are just starting out. Go ahead and incorporate that, calculate that in, because you're going to need that. You're going to need that. It does no good to work yourself to the bone and not being able to take care of yourself, and definitely not take care of your relationships as well.
Yeah, well, Amber just made a comment. I think
Mhm.
this is coming in via YouTube, but
Okay.
it's real easy for your personal relationships to suffer when you become an entrepreneur.
It's
Uh,
true.
It is true.
True.
I do think that, like what Asha just mentioned, though, I think that it's not only setting expectations for yourself, but it's also setting expectations for the people around you, because
Yeah.
your friends need to recognize that, hey, maybe I can't get together every Sunday and go watch football for, 5 hours a day or whatever. I can't go out on a Friday night because I've got stuff that needs to get done. I may have a significant other or a spouse at home that needs to recognize that the hours I'm putting in, um, I'm not just playing around at the office, that the
Right.
effort that I'm putting forward there's an end game. But I think
Yeah.
especially in those personal relationships, especially ones that you're living with somebody or you're married or you've got that significant other, they need to be bought into what you're doing and what you're
Yeah.
accomplishing. And I think that at the end of the day, where I see a lot of marriages break up or a lot of relationships start to splinter, it's because people got into that without actually having that conversation at the very front end. Look, this is what it's going to
Yeah.
take. Now, I'm not saying that you have to necessarily be there 100% to support me, but these are the things that I'm going to need to do in order to make this successful.
Yeah.
And I want to have that conversation up front early, and I want to have it often, because at the end of the day, when you're in that glam startup phase, everything looks great and it's exciting. And then a month after you start and you don't have any customers or nobody's paying your bill, or,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've got these taxing things that are just chirping at you, that's when people get frustrated and nervous. I'm doing a event for the franchise organization, International Franchise
Mhm.
Association, in a few weeks for one of their virtual conferences. And one of the things that they're talking about is how franchise owners have not actually gotten the true buy-in of their significant other. And so when things like
Mm.
the pandemic came and now you can't serve food, or you can't, you don't have
Yeah.
people coming in because everybody's shut down, and these situations cause a huge amount of stress. Well, that's where people that didn't really get or have those conversations early on, this is what will have to happen if things go great. And this is the
Yeah.
things that need to happen
Mm.
when things don't go so great. You need that support resource back home, that understands that this is part of the ebb and flow of what you're
Yeah.
experiencing. You don't need somebody saying, well, look, I never truly supported you in the first place doing this. You should never have opened that dry cleaners, or should never have decided you were going to go cut hair for a living or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really, really important that you get your buy-in from your partner, your life partner, whoever that might be. And at the end of the day, you surround yourself with friends that are going to be there to support you in the good times as well as the bad.
Yeah. Very, very important. Very important, the people that you surround yourself with. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And Kellyanne just,
Mm.
her comment's perfect. A marital partnership is hugely important. Having
Yeah.
those conversations, getting that buy-in and understanding, recognizing also that you are super excited and thrilled with your business because
Yeah.
that's what you want to do and your why, right? Like Asha
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, you know your why. Super critical that you help them understand what your why
Yeah.
is as well, so that you can figure that out. They can also understand, but recognize that sometimes, unless they work with you in the business or they're showing up and contributing in some capacity aside from just the capital that they're putting up to help you make your dream come true, um, it's hard for people to see the dream when it's not
Yeah.
theirs.
That's
So
true.
I think, I mean, we could probably talk about this for like 25 hours, right? That's really weird. A day plus 1 hour.
Yeah.
We could
Okay.
talk about that nonstop. It would be like the Jerry Lewis telethon, but different.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Anyway, most people watching are like, who's Jerry Lewis?
I know.
Yeah. So Asha's so young. She's like, I don't know who Jerry Lewis is. Anyway, this has been, we really, really appreciate everybody, tuning in today. If you happen to be catching this on the replay, thanks for watching it. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this. We greatly appreciate it. This will be on our podcast probably at some point this week when things slow down for us. We'll get it.
Yeah.
It'll be up there as an episode. But if you're not tuning in or you're not signed up for to receive any notifications about our future episodes, you can tune in for Conversations with Asha and Steve. We have a whole bunch of great content that we've put out there over the last few years on a variety of topics, not just entrepreneurship, but we encourage you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts,
Yeah.
Spotify, Stitcher. We're
We're
on
now on
Google
Amazon.
Podcast now. What's
We're on
that?
Amazon as well, Steve.
We're on Amazon as well.
Yes,
Yes.
we are.
Yeah. Actually, we got that announcement last week, right? So
Okay.
pretty much anywhere you tune into your podcast, you can hear us, because let's face it, you're going to want to take some of the brilliant advice Dr. Asha Prasad gives to you, and you're going to want that in your ears while you're out running or at the gym or you're on long car rides.
Oh, long car rides. Oh, no.
Asha, anything else that I forgot to include? How do people reach us if they want us to talk about a topic of the future or in the future?
So definitely, I want to thank everybody as well for joining us today. If you want us to answer any of your questions or anything, you can definitely contact us on our Facebook page or go to our website, conversationswithashaandsteve.com, and then send in a question via the contact or message us on Facebook.
Absolutely. And Asha, just so that everybody is aware, before I completely screw up and don't show this, how does everybody find you online?
So you can find me at the Prasad Method, or at really on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, theprasadmethod.com.
Yep. Asha's got some great stuff on her website. I highly encourage you to go check it out. And you've got a newsletter too, people can sign up for, right?
I do. I send a newsletter out every week. It's called Mindful Moments, and it just gives you some reflective thoughts to get you through your week. So you can sign up for that.
I count on that every week.
Do you really, Steve? Thank you.
Well, and you can find me online at RippleOn, and you can look at my website at ripplecentral.com. We're going to have an announcement about my upcoming book out there in the next few weeks, the 3rd edition of The Ripple Effect, Maximizing the Power of Relationships for Your Life and Business, which is right there. That's the old one right there.
Yeah.
The new one is coming out in less than a month. Well, technically it's launching November 1, but for some of our listeners, we may have some specials I'll show out there. And Dr. Asha Prasad has a book that she's working on that is going to be published.
Well, it was going to be sooner, but now it'll be the beginning of 2021. I don't have it. I don't have a concrete date yet, but it's in the works.
I like that. It was going to be sooner, but now it's going to be later.
It'll be later.
It's okay. I've been trying to get this edition out for 4 years. So, I mean, I totally understand. We both work with the same editor. Asha is just a little bit more diligent in delivering when she's supposed to. When he tells us to do stuff, she pays attention, and I will email him a bunch of questions and then never respond to his email. Or read it, really, for that matter. Yeah. You guys can talk bad about me at another time. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve. We greatly appreciate it. If you know somebody that will benefit from the YouTube show or our live stream, please share our next live stream, which will be in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yes.
And then be sure to, forward a link to your favorite podcast episode for Conversations with Asha and Steve. We'd sure appreciate it. As always, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye for now. Bye, Asha.
Bye, Steve.
You're still there.
I'm still here. Not going anywhere yet.
Well, we got to end the broadcast.
Yeah, that would help.
Awesome.